Israel and Palestine? It's not simple. That's what some people would like you to believe. Anyway, for a long time, we've been fed the story of a centuries-old religious war, tit for tat rocket skirmish, or even a real estate dispute. The history of Palestine is filled with so much more. Everyone has to be aware of this. How then did we arrive here? Now let's go back to the start. First, a world war comes to an end. Conflict. Muslims fighting each other, and a promise made by the West only a century ago. Thus, this is how the tale starts. The First World War is still going strong in 1916, now 617 years old. The Ottoman Empire is on the verge of disintegrating. If the Arabs were to assist the British and French in overthrowing the Ottomans, they would receive sovereignty and Arab leadership over the Arabian Peninsula and the Levant. After that, so the Arabs agreed and assisted them in overthrowing the Ottomans. I understand your thoughts at this point. What does this have to do with Israel's creation and Palestine? I promise that we will succeed. All right? Yeah. Arabs who want the land that had been promised them after the British and French won. They had no idea, though, that the British and the French had held a brief top secret meeting. Additionally, it was decided at this top secret summit that the conquered Ottoman province would be split into regions under French and British influence. The French would rule over southeastern Turkey, northern Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, while the British would get Palestine, Jordan, and southern Iraq. The Sykes Peacock Agreement was the name given to this. However, the Arabs were astonished to learn of this deal. They had been duped and conned. They believed they were fighting a war to remove their non-Arab Muslim rulers, but what they got in the end were, you guessed it, colonial rulers from Europe. It's a lengthy tale for a different video, though. Something strange is happening in Europe now that the British are in control of Palestine. As you can see, the Zionist movement had been gaining ground and making strong arguments in favor of the Jewish people's forced migration to Palestine and their right to the land. Furthermore, Britain unexpectedly announced in 1917 that it intended to establish a national home for Jews in Palestine. Thus, the British recently gave European Zionists ownership of Palestine, a nation that was 90% Palestinian. They gave it in the same manner as you would a chocolate box. Why the British ceded Palestine to Zionists is still a matter of contention among historians. It's absolutely incomprehensible. Less than 10% of Palestine's population was Jewish at this time. Thus, when the British began to encourage European Jews to go to Palestine between 1922 and 1935, the percentage of Jews increased to 27%. A native Palestinian population became more and more concerned when the British mandate was in full force and there was a large-scale influx of European Jews, meaning that more land would be taken. The Palestinians would show their British overlords how concerned they were, but they would not listen. Jewish settlement in Europe was growing. The British advocated for the division of Palestine and even suggested that the Arab population be forcibly removed from their homes. Yes, this was their strategy for handling the situation. As a result, the Palestinians rebelled against the British and logically rejected this proposition. Thousands of Palestinians died as a result of the harsh suppression of the uprisings. The Palestinians, however, refused to give up. Their struggle for independence would go on. The British, too, were obviously fed up. Thus, in 1947, the British chose to cede control of Palestine to the United Nations. In essence, they just said, here, clean up our mess. Thus, the UN put out this absurd plan once more, dividing Palestine into states for Arabs and Jews. Recall that just 1/3 of the population in Palestine were Jews, and the majority had only recently immigrated from Europe. However, they were given 55% of the land in this proposal. The Zionists welcomed the idea, while the Arabs, feeling they had once again been dealt a raw deal, rejected it. Here's the catch, though. The Zionists even advocated for extra territory since they disagreed with the suggested bounds. They therefore have the freedom to pick the size of the Israeli state, even though they have agreed to its existence. In 1948, thousands of Palestinians were left homeless and without land as Zionist force stormed and captured Palestinian populated villages and cities. Before the British officially withdrew their forces, the Zionists sought to annex and purify as much territory as possible in Palestine. Additionally, the Zionists declared the creation of the new state of Israel the same day they departed. Millions of Palestinians lost their nation overnight. Even stranger is the fact that the Soviet Union and the United States both recognized the fledgling state of Israel right away. And as if things couldn't get much worse, May 15, 1948 was arguably one of Palestine's worst days ever. They referred to it as the disaster or Nakba. It is really terrible to lose your home, your identity, and your country all at once. For those Palestinian men, women, and children, however, that was insufficient. They had to be driven into almost complete oblivion and ethnically wiped from their territories. See, the establishment of the State of Israel involved more than just the forced eviction of 1.9 million Palestinians from their homes, the confiscation of 78% of historic Palestine from its original inhabitants, the destruction and ethnic cleansing of 530 towns and cities, and the mass murder of 15,000 Palestinians in a series of atrocities. It implies that for the Palestinian people, it was the beginning of something even more terrifying. More than 70 years of occupation, house demolitions, arbitrary detentions, forced relocations, Israeli expansion, military checkpoints, wall building, prejudice, killings, and bombings of defenseless men, women, and children inside their own homes were heralded by it. No, it's not difficult. The Palestinian people are a people who have endured oppression, having had their lands taken from them, and ongoing suffering. This is how the circumstances of today are shaped by the events of the past, because we don't need it to happen again in another region of the world. It is crucial that we remember and consider our history before it repeats again. That's all for today. Stay tuned to It's Raw for more videos like this, and don't forget to subscribe.